the Market Musings podcast. Well, here we are back for another Christmas Market Musings with Mike Whitlow, of course, Doc Holliday and Darren Hazelwood. Back for another year. We did this for the first time last year, and I know this year two of us are sporting Christmas hats. Darren didn't get the memo.
Oh, Mark, I tried with a jumper, the woolly white jumper. It's an effort, I think.
Yeah, it's an effort. It is an effort. Yeah, it is an effort. Yeah. Well, next year, Darren, we'll have three hats. Yeah.
Oh, I think I might be able to do better than that. But let's save the surprise for next year.
Okay. Let's just hope his performance in 2025 as a director of a company is better than it is coming to an interview, stroke podcast, or general musing without a hat. We all said we were going to have one, and he's come without it. But I'm sure he's doing a fantastic job with the business. That's the main thing. Investors punt into companies based on performance, and I'm sure Daz is giving them a source of enthusiasm for 2025 based on what I'm seeing.
It's going to be a good year.
Good. No, it seems like it is, Darren, because you've got quite a few drill programs, haven't you, going on? I know next year, so it's going to be quite a big year, I think, for both companies, both Darren, both Panther and ECR. Of course, ECR has been doing lots of little bits of drilling, haven't they, Mike? And you're going to be sort of honing in where you're going to focus. So, I mean, before we sort of look into next year, what are our thoughts on this year, 2020? For Darren, of course, I saw you at the Resourcing Tomorrow show a couple of weeks ago, and I think we kind of discussed it, that, the vibe was slightly better. Well, maybe more than slightly better than last year. There's the money that was there last year is still there, and it's a little bit looser than it was perhaps a year ago. I'm getting the sense that actually for the first time at that show, and the first time generally, that a lot of things are being spoken about a bit more. Just some of the guests that were on the panel, some of the keynotes that were there. Nuclear was talked about a lot. Critical minerals. The UK had a good representation there. The Saudis were there. I actually did get the sense at that show for the first time that actually, you know what, maybe we are starting to see that wheel turning. But, you had lots of meetings. You give us your thoughts, Darren.
Yeah, no, I think you've actually highlighted the point that the market's missing. That governments have stepped in almost universally now. They're all seeing the threat to the supply chain, and that threat is very real. And I think the only place it hasn't recognised it, really, to be honest, is the market. Once you have anything of even the slightest bit of note, you're seeing big companies taking an interest at a very early stage. You're seeing governments being hyper supportive. That's only growing, and it all points very favourably to the future. To be honest, it's been a shocker for investors, right? And let's face it, it has almost universally. However, you are seeing signs of life, and I think that the biggest takeaway for me from 2024 is that you have to change your approach, because the access to the market is different. The access to how you're gonna get capital is different. However, that's probably on the positive side. But you've got to adapt, and you've got to be flexible, and that's what we've seen, a massive change in the last 3 months, and probably 90% of it is unannounceable, which is a crying shame for our investors. But it's all based on critical minerals.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking here from the company's point of view.
Sorry, Mark, I was just going to jump in. It must be quite encouraging for you, though. I mean, you've got that Minister of Mines, in Ontario and other parts of Canada that are super supportive of what you're doing. You've got these grants from Algep that you can sort of apply for. There's support there, isn't there? Not just in giving you a bit of lip service, but there's a bit of, there is a bit of sort of financial support as well. And I think, a lot of people forget that the likes of Canada, Australia, other parts of the world, that, there's an element of lower risk, which perhaps is unappreciated. When you see a company that's pulling grade out of West Africa or Central Africa, there's an absence of perhaps support that you get from government and from local ministers of mines, etc., and of course, funding, let alone the fact that the geopolitical situation's secure and safe. So I think that's a point that gets overlooked when they look at maybe Panther or ECR, and then go and use a peer that's based in another part of the world. They perhaps forget just how supportive and reliable a jurisdiction these companies are operating in.
Yeah, no, you raise a really pertinent point there. And at Mines and Money or Resources, so it's always going to be mine. Can we agree that it's Mines and Money?
Yeah.
It's always going to be Mines and Money, right? But no, you see there, George Peary, the Minister of Mines for Canada, just comes wandering up to us and to me, and we have a good chat. And obviously Stephen Crawford, who's the Minister of Mines basically for Ontario. The interaction with the Ontario Mining Board, the diplomatic community in Canada is very, very supportive. Just us, as an instance, I was at a meeting at the London Stock Exchange last week at 1-to-1, and that was driven through the interaction with the Canadian government, the UK government, and the London Stock Exchange is supportive, but they're supportive as well. Part of that is because they witness the support and the backing we've got via the Canadian government directly into what we're moving forward doing, and it's huge and it's so valuable. But I also think that people maybe have to look at the businesses that are doing the work. I don't think that that's given equal support. You guys have been very active on the ground. You've got a plan. You're moving towards that plan at ECR. Panther's the same, and it is very visible. But everybody gets put into one bowl, really, and that's not right. I look at our holding in Fulcrum. Those guys, really, that's a technology business, and I'm looking forward to being on the journey with Fulcrum all the way through. We obviously, towards the end of this year, we disposed of our Australian holding, but that's not going to be the case with Fulcrum, because you can see cash flow at Fulcrum in relatively short order, and it's a huge positive. But they're in the same jurisdiction as us, and we know what the support is. We know that Ontario's trying to create a circular economy. That's massive. And they're not just trying to create a circular economy; they're actually actively getting on the ground and supporting companies to enable them to achieve it. It has to be a value add for these businesses. But
it's one that's definitely overlooked, mate. I mean, we've talked about the geological survey and the collaboration that we've done with those guys. We get a free sort of look under the cover at our rare earths, whilst we're focused elsewhere, given the results we got from sort of Gorge Creek and Gorge Creek West, and again, further sort of collaboration with academia. And I see the market saying, "Oh, well, these are going to take 3 to 5 years to get anything." I mean, look, the reality is that they're not setting the pace. We're not in our transaction agreement and future outlook is not being set by academia. What we're saying is, it's great to have you, coming along on the journey, and it's a fantastic endorsement to not only the assets but the way that we're operating up there in Queensland. So for me, I'm really proud of what we're doing. We're helping the future of the industry tomorrow in partnering up and giving them a little bit of our time and input. And I think that the market misses the significance of these little events that are taking place. Sometimes the market's beating people up so much they automatically see the downside without really understanding that if you want to take projects into production, if you want to be able to grow your brand and your name up in that part of the world, these relationships are super important, and we've forged them over the last 12 months. So yeah, we're super gassed about that, and I can see what you're doing there with Panther too, Darren.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, because the Department of Mines for Ontario approached me at Mines and Money, and said, look, if you want to do any studies, if you want to involve Lakehead University, for instance, in Thunder Bay, because that's where we're based out of, there's up to $500,000 available. And they basically fund it. And that's something that we're certainly investigating further, because there are things going on. And to have that kind of support, but again, I wouldn't necessarily make a big song and dance about that in the market, because the market would look at it and say, oh, you're doing a study. Like, yeah, but what are we studying? What are we looking at? What are we looking to develop? Understand how these relationships all intertwine and the value add within that. And you're right, it doesn't. But ultimately, I guess the market has its ways. I don't know how you guys obviously have done well in the market this year, and it's definitely going to get interesting. That's for sure.
It's going to get interesting. And I mean, just from your point of view, Darren, of course, with your time at Panther Metals, have you seen this level of interest from government? No, until when? What, a year ago? 6 months ago? When did it sort of start?
Canadian government have always been supportive, but now you're starting to see definitive action behind the scenes, and they're prepared to sort of step out of their shell as, let's say, diplomats. As diplomats, they're prepared to actually put themselves forward now to make sure that you're able to access the areas and the people that you need. But also, you've seen a major shift from majors in the industry. They are coming right down the food chain now. Okay. And you don't need a lot for them to get involved. So actually, everything is aligned within the industry. And the truth is, it's because they understand what's going on. They see the lack of discoveries. The governments know that the supply chain, not today, but the moment where the supply chain starts to creak is the equivalent of just over the hill. It's actually a scary place the world's starting to move to. And
I think one of the things that was highlighted to me when we were at Mining Some Money last year, or Resourcing Tomorrow for Mark, was the kind of meetings that we were getting with B2 Gold and a couple of these types of people, and just a conversation around the lack of investment and new discovery over not just the last year or the last couple of years, but quite a significant amount of time, depending on the commodity. And then you saw sort of the ban on export of antimony and stuff like that out of Asia. So now you can see that supply chain and controlling mechanism that code now needs to be cracked, and the only way that the Western Hemisphere can get around that is by making further investment and collaboration and development, and that's one of the wonderful things for Canada, Australia, America. These countries they're the home states, aren't they? The home nations, and it's where you're going to get some investment and support. And yeah, I mean, Europe's interesting too, no doubt about it. But right now, I think we're in a great postcode, and there's a real need to be able to get some of that sort of supply and offtake and everything else that these guys need. And we've spoke to a few people, both in the listed company at ECR and even our private businesses, that quite significant in size in comparator, and that conversation is meaningful now. There's a huge amount of interest.
Yeah, and that's what people don't see, unfortunately. If they had visibility as to what's going on behind the scenes, you would see a different change. Obviously, the market's aware of it. I think we're seeing a moment in London where they're trying to make the most of their last moments before things do really shift in favour again of the investor.
Deals are starting to work as well, aren't they? I mean, I look at ourselves. We raised some capital, got absolutely crucified for it, as I'm sure you know. Some would say the interview that we put out a day before, getting into discussions about fundraising isn't wise. We turned down cash 4 times before that. You never know when that moment's going to come. One of the things that you learn quick, and I've always been aware of, is if you start the conversation, it's a little bit like a fist fight. You make sure that you hit hard and quick and get it over as fast as you can, because if you don't, it's going to get messy and you get beaten up badly as a result. So, it's a tricky one, but the market, you're starting to see deals work. You're starting to see money for these things. So whilst it appears to have been the same old for the last 6 months, I think there's been a shift in these small caps. I think you've seen, perhaps our own raise at 0.33, slightly underwater. I don't take it, any great pride in the fact that that's, we're not trading higher based on where we are and where we should be. But at the same time, the money's there now. And I'm looking at other transactions, and, you can start to see them, working out. It's companies that are raising money and some significant cash at times, and the stock price is moving the right way. The interest is slowly coming back around, albeit, not as quick as perhaps we would have liked in the back end of 24. But, I'm optimistic for 25, particularly in the sector of mining, natural resources.
What did you mean, Darren, when you say you think London's making the most of the last kind of throes, if you like, of the situation? Is that the sort of that short-term sort of tradey mindset? What do you mean by that?
Yeah. I think London's been particularly damaged over the last 3 years, and the brokers and market makers have had to do what they've got to do. Now, ultimately, they're not daft, right? They know that if they carry on down that route and they carry on with the trader mentality across the board, as opposed to an investment thesis, they're all going to be unemployed within 3 or 4 years.
Sure, yeah.
And we've seen a massive cull of the number of brokers and the number of people working within the industry already over the last 5 years. But and so that they will naturally know they have to change this if they want to pay their mortgage, if they want to stay in the game, they want to stay in the city. They need to change the market to an investment psyche.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that.
It's ethics as well, isn't it? I mean, what was acceptable 2, 3, 5, 7 years ago isn't acceptable today, and or in fact, whether it's acceptable or not, it doesn't work anymore. People are a little bit, wiser, and the market's a little bit thinner. And I think that, if I'm reading Darren right, he's saying that, whilst we've all had to learn to adapt, they're going to have to adapt too. I think the biggest frustration for me out there is the mentality of some of these city brokers is you must blow the knees out of the market to stand any chance of making transactions work. If you actually go and look at the transactions that have worked in the last few weeks, they've not blown the knees out of the market. In doing so, I think it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you structure a deal the right way, the market buys in and supports it. They don't necessarily need to see a 70% discount for it to work out. So I think it was at Amarok last week did a raise with a much bigger company than ours, but with next to no discount, and the shares are trading up. There's support for it. There's interest there. Good on them. And that's the kind of deal that we want to see, being replicated time and again, isn't it?
Yeah, but what are Amarok? 350 million market cap.
No, for sure, yeah.
And I think what you're seeing is that that is moving down through the market. Yeah. And that's why I think that you probably, in the last throes of the current business model that the city's sort of running on, that's on fumes. Once you see the 300 million market caps doing that will naturally feed down to the junior explorers. And as I say, you don't need a lot to get quite a lot of interest. And it's a different world, and it's going to be a different world as well.
Well, it's good. It's good to hear. And I mean, I did a podcast with Rick Rule that's going out when we were recording this on the Monday. The Rick Rule podcast is going out in about 30 minutes.
Mike,
So by the time,
did you get that name drop? Did you see that? He's using and abusing.
I mean, he brushes shoulders with the rich and famous and the almighty these days.
Yes.
You know, I mean.
Well, I interviewed Lord for the first time.
Mark from Starbucks is no longer. This is it. He's on his journey of complete world domination now.
Yeah. Will we even be invited next year?
No, I don't think so. It'll be,
of course you will.
Be Mike Ashley and the big phrases push and Rick Rule in Golden.
Oh, Friedland. It'd be good to get Friedland. I tell you, I'm going to the Swiss Mining Institute. I was invited to the SMI, which apparently is quite exclusive. I'm going to there next March.
Apparently, did you see that, Mike? Apparently, it's quite exclusive.
Yeah, it's quite exclusive.
Yeah,
and he'll be playing. He'll be probably watching the polo afterwards, or off the Courchevel or wherever it is skiing. We get it, Mark. You don't have to rub our nose in it too much. We're just pawns on the chessboard of life, trying to drive these mining companies in the right direction.
Yeah, sure. I've still got a way to go to get
Mark. Think of us.
Yeah, of course. I aspire to be like you guys. You guys are successful investors. It's more than I can say. My son is doing better than me with his Ondo InsurTech shares and his junior stocks and shares ISA. He's up 180%. He's only 10 months old, and he's nearly two-bagged. It's more than I've done in my 10 years.
Yeah, take some instruction from him then in future, and you'll do all right, won't you?
Well, clearly he listened to his mum rather than his dad when making his investment decision.
Yeah. Probably. But no, on the Rick Rule, he said, because I was talking about the markets, and he said there is money available for good projects, and he's getting cut back on a lot of his placings. But he did say he blames the brokers. Listen, sort of what you were saying. They've done a pretty poor job for their clients over the last few years. But maybe it's just what they had to do, effectively, almost, to sort of survive.
I just reiterate them. I didn't blame the brokers. I think it's the entire sector. To be honest with you, everybody that's involved. I think it's a wider.
Nobody wants to piss the brokers off, Daz. I get it. Nobody wants to piss brokers off, but let's just be honest about it. The way that these guys have operated over the years has been unforgivable at certain points in certain situations. That's not to single anybody out, but the whole sort of theory behind how business was conducted and the damage that it's done has been quite severe. Now, I've seen certain, and I won't name them, brokers that have been really successful. The floated companies, they're having success, and maybe some people would argue they've not got the best pedigree, but there's clearly something that they're doing that's working versus perhaps some of these people that are stuck in that old treadmill of trying to just keep replicating the same deal flow. I think we need to see some new ideas, and those that are having those new ideas are getting success, and long may that continue. But you're too nice, Daz. For me, I'm and as a director, I don't want to shoot anybody personally down, but I just think my experience over the last decade, at least in the market, is I've seen some pretty outrageous things go on. And this market's been particularly tough on the back of a very, very positive post-COVID run for maybe 12, 15, 18 months, where it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And these guys perhaps should have reacted quicker, changed the theory and the structuring of transactions. We perhaps wouldn't all be in such a big a mess. I'm not blaming the brokers. What I'm saying is they've been slow to respond and react, and that's what's caused some of this. Hopefully, people will realise that if they work with the clients, whether it be the PCB guys, whether it be the corporate guys, whether it be the institutional side, we'll get a better outcome if there's more of a collective input into it, rather than just whipping your pants down.
Listen, I'm a big believer in the fact that the corporates all operate independently, and it's time for the corporates to come together for the benefit of their own shareholders. I think there should be limits, and everyone should buy into that in terms of everything that goes on, and it can be driven by the corporates, and I think it should be, but that's probably a separate conversation.
Quite a serious conversation, isn't it? I mean, I thought we were going to be,
it's quite
taking our shirts off and swinging it round our heads and singing Christmas carols. It's turning into quite a serious conversation, this, hasn't it?
It has, actually. It has.
it is quite early in the morning. We can maybe come
That's
back
true.
and do the second half at 10:30 at night.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
see what goes on there.
Yeah. But generally, you both said you're quite optimistic for next year. So let's look ahead to next year. And I guess you're both still, I know, private investors. You both still sort of invest privately. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, you're both feeling pretty confident about next year. Then what are you sort of, not necessarily stock picks, for example, but how are you sort of picking companies? What you're looking at? Which companies are going to do better in this space? Do you think, Darren?
No, I rarely invest now.
Okay.
My focus is Panther, and
On Panther, yeah.
with good reason. And you'll see change, but it'll be subtle change, very early doors in Panther, and I will talk about it, and you'll have to join the dots. But some of it's covered off in this conversation already. And that's due to what's been going on behind the scenes over the last few months, and how we've seen the market open up for us. I think for shareholders, they haven't got the rewards. However, we've obviously got core in the labs. We've got a large number of other things going on behind the scenes, and they'll understand in pretty short order, if they're able to join the dots, that we've run through COVID with Panther, we've run through this appalling market, and basically, as I've said in a couple of RNSs, that we're accelerating things in a dramatic way. And that's what you're going to see in the business. There becomes a point where you either, for want of a better expression, shit or get off the pot. And I've never wanted a business that effectively feels like you're wading through treacle. It needs to be dynamic. It needs to be prepared to adjust and do things accordingly. We've had a stunning 4 or 5 months corporately, but just not all of that is out there. And you're going to see the fruits of that labour over the next 8 to 10 months. This business will, I suspect, be in a very, very different place. But the proof's in the pudding. The proof, and I believe that. I prefer actions as opposed to words. So people will hear this and think, "Oh, typical, super bullish." However, look at the actions and look at the news releases, but also just think about it and join your dots, and you'll start to understand that.
Well, you have, you sort of bided your time.
We're at Christmas. I hate being this bloody mysterious, because it's not by design. Unfortunately, it's the rules of the market.
Tell you what, I'd just take the mist away and just go serious. I'll tell you, I remember when you used to be like, footloose and fancy free, Daz.
Oh no, this is getting very. Actually, maybe it's more of a reflection where we're at. Maybe it's. It is becoming very, very serious, but actually, with the direction of travel, it's becoming serious and more fun, because you can finally feel the chains coming off.
Yeah, I think my personal experience is, having been at this for a little while now, is I can see, there's a lot of people out there in the market that are investing, and they maybe look at yourself, or they'll look to me and say, well, these guys have had some personal success. They've come into the PLC world and are having some success there, maybe slower than some would hope. I think one of my takeaways is that you can't take things personally. There's a lot of emotion involved out there. There's a lot of people who will question your judgment and integrity every single day when it's out there in the public for all to see, and yet these guys are not judged by the same sort of rule. We accept that when we come into the public life and stick your head above the parapet. But the thing I take away is when you take scrape back the surface and you get under some of the events that happen that you perhaps don't enjoy. There's still some very small pockets of real sort of passion and optimism. There are groups of people out there that really do work hard to try and understand where those opportunities are and are working tirelessly to try and position themselves. And credit to them, because it's not been easy, and it does sound like it's quite a sort of bar humbug type moment or a Scroogey type discussion when we're talking about serious aspects of the market. But for me, being in this job, if you take the emotion out of it and you take some of the events that perhaps we have to endure as part of being a director of these companies, we are obligated to keep these. You can't take risks and chances like you might do in your own portfolio. You can take some risks, you can take some chances, but we're obligated to make sure that the integrity of these businesses is secure moving forward. And for that, you can take a bit of stick, but I've not got the broadest of shoulders, but they're broad enough to take it, and my skin's very thick. But I think I still think there's some great people out there. There's some great opportunities, great sectors. There's going to be the new buzzword sector. It was maybe helium 23, 24. Is it hydrogen? Is it nuclear? I don't know where it is. But ultimately, when you start thinking about commodities like copper and gold and rare earths, and these are going to be around, and they'll be around for quite some time, because whatever trajectory we go on, there's going to be a requirement for those particular commodities, and that's because the world can't develop and it can't insulate itself against uncertainty without it. So I'm pretty confident that we'll move into a better environment. I'm sure that myself, Darren, and many other of these sort of directors will go from zero to hero overnight, and suddenly shit won't stink. But the truth of it is we should be judged on the achievements that we can attain in a very challenging market. And whilst my personal message coming away from this is, for those individuals who feel that perhaps they've not had a fair crack of the whip yet, give us a bit more time, because if we were trading the wrong direction in a very challenging market, I could take that. But when we're trading the right direction, albeit quite slowly in a very difficult market, I think you should give people just a little bit more time. Give us the time and space, and I'm pretty certain we can achieve the returns that all of these guys dream of. This is the time in the market to be positioning yourselves. It's not in a year or two. When we get on that second and third wave of recovery, that's not the time to be loading in your pension and your SIP. Of course, right now, dipping your toe in on the first wave of recovery, it's not always obvious. It's quite scary, and lots of people are still full of pessimism. But from an investor's perspective, I would say is just easing yourself in to the right sort of area right now is going to be the most sort of rewarding in the future.
It's interesting actually, because I think it's Rick Rule has said that his greatest returns have almost universally come from companies he invested in, and then have almost immediately dropped 50%. And then they've kicked for various reasons. And he's probably the most successful investor globally in this space. So
I don't think I've ever heard of him, Daz. Don't think I've ever heard of it. Mark's friend, you mean?
It was Mark. Apparently, they've exchanged Christmas cards. Whether it's gone any further, who knows?
I got an invite to Boca Raton, so I'll be going there next year. Yeah, that's another one.
But it's interesting you say about comments, etc. You got a few pelters for your raise recently. I was actually listening to Joe Rogan podcast last night, and he said on there that he stopped looking at any comments about him personally on social media, and his reason's really quite simple. Is that why should he be bothered about a comment from somebody that's never spoken to him face to face in his life, and somebody he doesn't know?
Yeah. That's it.
It's would he engage? Would he exchange? And the answer is almost universally no. I'm not adverse if I can get hold of a phone number, phoning somebody up who's maybe personally felt it's crossed the line, and they almost universally don't even answer the phone. You know, it doesn't. So I'm with you there, Mike. I'm kind of past that stage. What we need to be focusing on is building the business, and that's where we're heading.
And doing what exploration companies should do, which is getting that drill in the ground. And I think you two on this podcast today. I mean, of course, Darren, you know you're very big on protecting shareholders, not diluting unnecessarily. And something you said to me, I think when we met in London, was you've got to think: would you trust your money with this person? You know, you trust your money with the bank. You know, do you trust your money with this person leading this company? And that's, I think, a really good question to ask. You know, and from your point of view, not going down the shareholder dilution route, being prudent, and almost biding the time a little bit now, so that things are a bit better positioned, and you're going to have a pretty active field season 2025, you know, which is what it's all about. And Mike and, of course, Nick at ECR, you know, the same thing, doing what exploration companies should do and not remunerating themselves, you know, only taking it in shares so they win or lose along with shareholders.
I'll tell you something, Mark. You know how very few people really now even acknowledge that. I mean, it's insane. In the last round, some of the this is a lifestyle business. I mean, it can only be a lifestyle business if you're getting paid. I mean, I think I might have had about 10 grand out of the company since I joined 15 months ago. I'm probably got invoices that I've never submitted. My whole theory here of getting involved in this business, I probably lost more money not being able to look at some of the day-to-day things. I've lost more money than I've ever made in this business.
It's cost me a fortune. Sorry to jump in there, Mike.
Yeah,
absolutely. It personally has cost me that. I wouldn't change it. I love our trajectory. I love where we're going. I love the networks we've built up, everything else. But on a personal level, people that does tickle me a little bit, because people assume that you're having this joyous ride, and eating caviar for breakfast and drinking champagne for lunch.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, it's
and I know that's reflected in others as well, interestingly, but nobody cares. You can slip back into the market when the time's right, or your journey comes to an end. The market will always be there.
It will, and it'll always be populated with idiots as well. I mean, that's not to say all investors are stupid or foolish, but I think there is a populace of people who came into the market during COVID where it was sort of easy work. They didn't really have to hone the skills down. A little bit like the herd on the Great Savannah. They could run in the pack, get from A to B safely, and now that pack has been really sort of picked at over the years, they feel the pressure of the lioness on the hide. And I think the problem is my advice would be, and this is an investor, not as a director of a company, is try and learn and understand the differences or the things that set individuals or businesses or assets or opportunities apart from the rest. Really be able to. No one expects you to be an expert at reading balance sheets or being a chartist overnight or whatever it might be. Just find some basic principles, and I'm going to go all the way back to when I was more vocal in the markets. But just get some robust principles.
Mark, When
I don't
was this,
remember those days. No, I can't remember that.
No. Did you have an opinion? And
I did have an opinion, and I was a gobshite as well. And probably would have said, "You're running a lifestyle company, Mike," without doing enough research to understand that. I've been paid in shares, and I get those shares on the basis, I can only dispose of them if we've got some form of success. We're super optimistic. We've got a lot going on as a business. I think that there's a community of people out there who are frustrated because they've perhaps got involved in this industry and made money and not realised how hard it is and what they need to do. But just get some simple principles and basic sort of rules that work for you, and you'll start to, eke out some success. That's to investors and, for our shareholders, because I know we might be running out of time. So I want to get this in before I call it a day. To our shareholders, look, we've got an exciting future. We've got 4 or 5 key events during 2025 that we're fully funded for. That'll take place. And I think running these businesses is important, that you don't just rest on your laurels or one single opportunity. There's got to be always a hopper and a pipeline of where you're going to go next and how you're going to do it. We feel like we've got that covered, and that should be, represented in the price. And as I'm sure you feel the same.
Oh, absolutely. But I must admit, I'm keen for ECR to send you some money so at least you can afford a razor, because that beard is starting to get pretty impressive, Mike.
I'll be honest, it was a lot thicker. It's just, mate, to be honest, do you know what? I grew this beard when I was 30 years old. I used to do a lot of mountaineering and hiking. I was a lot fitter, thinner. I used to train 3-4 times a week. In fact, I used to run a marathon a week, believe it or not. Some of these people who call you a fat lump of shit, I think was one called me. This fat lump of shit, used to be quite well looked after once upon a time. But you're right, I've let myself go in many ways, to be honest, Darren. But I'm going to take inspiration. When we get over the line with these businesses, we can both become gym buddies with a baby face.
Oh, don't. It's I must admit, my days of playing football. I look back at some of those photos. There's a few pounds been added since those times, but
well, I did try and inspire you, didn't I, Darren? I don't know if you remember. I sent you some AI-generated Darren Hazelwood beach body pictures, and I tried to inspire you to get back there. But I think you said the picture was inversed.
Well, sadly, you scared me. Actually,
that was
Mark,
quite scary.
Getting those sort of photos from another guy, it's I'm very, very relaxed about all things, but it wasn't expected. Let's put it like that way. Let's put it like that.
With an abnormally large drill bit as well, eh?
What's your target for 2025, Mike, with ECR? Where do you think you can take it?
I think we've got, based on the opportunities that we've looked at over the last 12 months, I think there's potential for us to look at additional opportunities that aren't within the business. This would be based really on the disposal of the non-core assets. So I think if we're successful and we're confident, based on where we are right now, that would be the case. And it's been a real sort of labour of love. That's going to open the door for us to do some quite interesting things. And that would also give us the opportunity to look at perhaps other companies, other assets, and say, you know what, the market might not be seeing this, but we are. So I think, we've got that in the back burner. I think getting, discoveries is important. Production's also a big target for us. I think the stuff up at Lulworth is really, we've got to get a drill out there and get some drilling done. But I think, we've vectored in, we've got enough drill targets now and ranked them for us to do that. We've got a bit of follow-up work from Tambo by the time this goes out. That may well have been announced. That campaign, that diamond campaign we did down there, it was a target that the previous geologists in the business had a huge sort of hotspot over. We'll see what's going on there, but there's continuation of mineralization and a presence of gold underneath, an old working, which again is encouraging. So yeah, I mean, just being able to develop our assets, look for discoveries, and get an asset into production and look at maybe what other opportunities may well be out there. One would assume if you've got a strong balance sheet, it gives you a huge amount of opportunity that perhaps some less fortunate have been unable to have. So we're already having conversations, and I've done really through much of the year. But again, like you said earlier, it can go unnoticed at times. But I think my sole target when I got into this was to try and get this valuation and market cap back to, the glory days of previous management based on previous thoughts, but have a bit more substance behind it. And give those guys that perhaps have been locked in for years. I seem to keep getting blamed as well for what previous management did. I'm not sure why that is. All I'm trying to do is get the price to a level where these guys can feel it's a bit more respectable. But yeah, we want to give everybody a happy ending.
But on that note, I should probably throw to Darren as well. Are you looking for a happy ending, Darren?
Always looking for a happy ending, Mark. Yeah, no, 2025 is already building up to be a mammoth year. And as I say, I think what you'll see in the short term, you're going to see numbers from Dotted Lake. At some point, we've got drill hole 1 in. If that contains gold, it's game changer for us, due to the strike length from our previous hole and its classic Ontario gold system. You look at the likes of Detour Mine, Greenstone Gold Mine, even Landor. Landor have got 1.5 million ounces across multiple deposits. That would be a game changer, but that's just a bonus. It's not the target of Dotted Lake, and we'll be getting some news out on that. For further holes I suspect towards the end of January. And we're pleased with them, but overall, it's going to be about getting the drill bit in the ground. And I suspect we'll probably run the most comprehensive drilling campaign in the sub £20 million market cap arena in London this year. Okay. It might be a few surprises about how we do that, and I would like to get to the point where we've got an announceable deal with a major, because our shareholders deserve that, and it's not quite there yet. But the focus will be on a bonga at this point, but there are also other opportunities within Ontario. We're having some quite deep conversations, and as I say, people sometimes you've got to be able to join the dots. Do that over the coming weeks, and fingers crossed it delivers what we hope. But I'll be disappointed if the valuation of this business isn't 3 times higher by this time next year. If the valuation isn't 3 times higher, I suspect you would see a major change at the top, because the acceleration that we're going to put down. But you've got to appreciate why we're doing it now. Market conditions are just starting to ease a little bit. Our network has never been so good. The nature of the people we're talking to, our own results, the slightly wider network, our service providers, we've narrowed those down now, so that we work very closely with those in terms of drillers and additional geological support. And I, as a CEO, I have to recognise that, see that, understand it's taken time, why it's taken time. That is perfectly good. And we just got to put our foot to the pedal now and deliver to shareholders.
Good. Well, thank you both for your time. It was a bit longer than we thought, but that's good. It's nice to have our annual Christmas podcast outlook for next year. So yeah, I'm looking forward to speaking to you all in the new year. I'll just take the opportunity to thank all Stockbox listeners, viewers, etc. for your support, and hopefully enjoying the content over the course of 2024, and a happy Christmas to all our followers. Yeah,
I'd like to wish my shareholders a happy Christmas and a prosperous new year.
I just hope the wife doesn't give me a load of earache when I go out on the lash on Boxing Day, because I've not had many days off this year, but I'll be having a right old session on Boxing Day, so I'm more interested that I don't get railroaded by the good lady, Mrs. Holiday. But no, Merry Christmas, chaps. Thanks for everything, Mark. Credit to you guys for pressing on. It's a growing platform, and I think it's one of these things that investors may not appreciate at times, but it's a great source of communication, and that's important. So yeah, all the best, lads.
Good. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, Mark.